Hey guys, our show is sponsored by GhostBed. Check them out, please. They make awesome mattresses, awesome pillows, awesome bedding. GhostBed provides high quality and super comfortable award-winning mattresses crafted in the US and Canada. Did you know that 60% of US adults report being too hot when they're trying to sleep? That's me. I'm a sweaty little baby. That's why we designed all of our products with cooling features so you stay comfortable and asleep all night long. Pair any of our mattresses with GhostBed's award-winning adjustable base and get the ultimate sleep experience. GhostBed rules the family-owned business, 60,000 plus 5-star reviews. They have sleep experts on staff with 20 plus years of experience. So if you have any questions, you can hit them up and ask them, maybe what kind of mattresses work for you. 20 plus year warranty. That's 2 times the industry standard. Free shipping and returns on mattresses. Most of the products ship out within 24 hours. They have in-house customer support and sleep experts chilling in Plantation, Florida. It rules. It's the best. They give you 101 nights risk-free to make sure that these beds are right for you. If you don't like it after 101 nights, you could send it back, full refund. When you purchase a GhostBed mattress, your comfort guaranteed. I'm reading it right now, and it's capital letters, guaranteed. Okay? They do the right thing, and they're a great company. If you're not sure which GhostBed's right for you, like I said before, you could take their mattress quiz online, or you can give a call to one of their sleep experts, and they'll help you with exactly what you possibly could need, what works for you and what doesn't. And the best news about this is, Team House listeners and viewers, you get an extra 10% off site-wide for a limited time. You just go to ghostbed.com/house and use the code HOUSE at checkout. One more time, that's ghostbed.com/house with the code HOUSE, HOUSE, at checkout for an extra 10% off site-wide. I want to thank GhostBed for their continued support. I want to thank all the fans that listen and watch for their continued support. Without you guys, we are nothing. So thank you for supporting the show, and thank you for supporting the companies that help support the show. ghostbed.com/house for 10% off. Made in the US, made in Canada. Shout out to our brothers in Canada. They rock. Check them out. I love GhostBed. Thanks, guys.
The Team House with your hosts, Jack Murphy and David Park.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 401 of the Team House. I'm Jack Murphy here today with our guest, Mike Yeagley. Mike had a long career, and this is a little bit different for our podcast, in ad technology.
That's right.
But that also played into using that technology for intelligence purposes with the special operations community. And Mike was a big part of the program that was called Locomotive and then VISR.
That's right.
And consults with the intelligence community, with our government, and actually has some very interesting stories to talk about regarding OPSEC and signature reduction and how we go looking for bad guys out there in the world. So thank you, Mike, for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be in the Team House.
Yeah. This is, I love, as much as I love interviewing like rangers and operators and stuff like that, it's cool to get the behind the scenes and kind of hear the other side of the story, because there's a lot, as I'm sure you learned when you were working there, there's a lot that goes into making these operations happen.
It's so, if you think about intelligence as a data set, whether it's human, ELINT, SIGINT, they are data sets. And there's this other component of data set that is called commercial data. It is the data that everybody generates, the telemetry off of your devices, your watches, your smartphones, your smart refrigerators, your cars.
The stuff we click on, the videos
everything.
we watch.
We basically have agreed to carry sensors with us wherever we go, and those sensors have become systemic to our livelihoods. But that data tells a very, very interesting, very intimate story. And that story is told about operators, case officers, special agents, the community that has acute requirements for discretion or privacy. They can't outrun this. Our adversaries can't outrun it. And so it is emerging as an int that is low risk, low cost to acquire compared to other forms. And when introduced as this new concept about 10 years ago, people were comparing it to the, this is like the M4,
Right,
it's revolutionary. Meanwhile, the advertising community had been doing it since smartphones became ubiquitous. Some of the best geospatial intelligence analysts work on Madison Avenue wearing skinny jeans, but they are developing patterns of life of consumers for a different conversion metric. They're looking for lift and to sell us stuff we don't need, whereas the conversion metric, whether it's a targeting application or an OPSEC or counterintelligence application, is the words are different, but at the same, we're looking for the same kind of lift. We think about this, the intelligence world as having the answers to everything, and from the perspective of innovation and what the taxpayer should expect of their government to be innovating, there are pockets within our government that do this very well, and they're usually not. It's not in their remit to be innovators. They're doing it because the mission requires it.
Yeah, they have to.
And this program happened because of 28-year-olds who weren't told to go and be innovative. They just were. And that should make us feel good.
Yeah.
So if you think about this evolution over this period of time, we've gotten a little better, but we need to be able to move a little faster. We're still trying to figure out what to make of commercial data. Well, we've had 10 years. We should be beyond the policy paper, and we should be in full operational mode.
Well, let's take a step back here. You spent about 20 years in the private sector. Tell us a little bit about, kind of like how you found your way into that line of work.
Yep.
What did you start doing as an entry-level guy versus where you ended up 20 years later?
Well, so I came of age in the dot-com revolution. Worked for a bunch of startups in that period of time. None of them exited, which is why I'm still working. But I've always been in the data analytics field, either as a project manager, implementation on the BD side, business development side, but always in that space of integrating various data sets into what we would call in the community a common operating picture, or what's called in the private sector business intelligence, where you're looking at the equivalent would be you may have heard the story where you've got a guy who comes into a store and he's there to buy diapers, and he buys a 6-pack of beer, and that correlation is visible in point of sale data. Well, the same mechanics work when we're talking about intelligence. We're looking for patterns and correlation and things that are non-obvious, but when you take a step back, it's like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So 20 years doing that type of work at a higher speed because of implementation mechanics and things like that.
I mean, the time frames involved. I mean, you're going from presumably a time when the internet was still pretty primitive to the advent of social media. I mean, you must have seen some pretty tremendous changes in your field.
Oh, I mean, so the internet, I was working in this field when we didn't quite know what the internet was as a delivery mechanism. So think about it this way. We had electricity, and that was groundbreaking. But what was the killer app for electricity? The light switch. That made it.
I was going to say AC, electricity.
The light switch was the equivalent of the browser.
Right. The interface.
The interface. It made it so that everybody could use it. You didn't need to write scripts and code. You could use it. And then it just became the platform that everything is built off of. So back then, it was interesting if your app was designed for the web, as opposed to being something you'd go and install on a corporate server.
Gotcha, yeah.
And host it, and you'd have to go to the AS400 server to get to it. This was pre those days, and the companies that sort of, there were a lot of companies that were functioning as companies when they were really just features and functions of some larger capability.
Yep.
And that's where you started seeing the consolidation. So, yeah, I was working in the Valley when this was happening. The hubris and the arrogance and the self-righteousness was just like out of control.
When you say that, you mean sort of that like famous Jurassic Park quote of like, you ran towards it so quickly that you never really thought if you should.
Yeah, exactly. The idea of I am smarter and have a vision that others can't quite ponder and get.
Right. Only I
can see through this. And so there was a lot of, and I was young at the time, but so I've seen a lot of the failures. I've seen how things don't scale. And when I started this with JSOC, we were able to look at it from a perspective of minimum viable product, MVP. So we're not going to try to boil the ocean with a match. We're going to start with very basic functionality and grow it incrementally, just along a linear path, but doing it in a way where I'm sitting with intelligence analysts at the Joint Intelligence Brigade, the JIB, which was my sponsoring entity, and sort of walking them through how this works. And if we could do it this way, would that, and I'm just taking requirements and sort of building the capability that way. The interesting piece in all of this was that we decided that the command did not need more software. They did not need an interface. They did not need an application. They wanted data. They wanted the raw data, which,
they have their analysts.
We have our analysts, and we have more geospatial capability than we know what to do with. Right. We want data. And that was an interesting decision, because typically people want the easy button. They want a really cool interface where they can log in, do their thing. They don't have to think about it. We were selling raw data to JSOC.
So before we jump into the military side of it, I just want to dwell on this just a little bit longer for some of our viewers, and myself included, who might not be familiar with the industry. When I think of ad tech, what is ad tech? To me, it is like you see those ads on Facebook.
Yep.
They're targeting me.
Yes.
Because they know I like to paint scale miniatures, so they're going to try to sell me scale miniatures. Somebody who's a little more wealthy, they're trying to sell them Lexuses or something like this.
Yep.
How does, what do you see ad tech as, in the industry? What else am I missing there that it includes?
I mean, so if you think about ad tech is technology infrastructure powered by data. The underlying, the decisions or the analysis is made through data. And what ad tech basically is nurturing is this ability to connect an advertiser with a consumer in a millisecond through something called real-time bidding, where there is space on your device for an ad placement.
This is like Google Ads.
Google Ads.
Okay.
Yep. So this ad tech is the infrastructure that makes all of that happen at scale, where you're playing a game and you get an ad. And that ad, the premise or the thesis is that ad that you are seeing on your device is relevant to you. Now, chances are, because you're playing a game, the ad is going to source or consider that contextual signal you are a gamer.
So you'll buy more games.
So you'll buy more games. So you're probably seeing more ads for games. I will tell you, there is no, I do not know of any situation where ad tech has intercepted, and I've heard this story before, that intercepted somebody who's on their way to Starbucks with an ad that's diverted them to some other coffee place. Doesn't work that way. This is sort of a long tail of targeting you based upon some contextual signals.
It's like, what do they say that somebody has to have like 8 impressions or something like that
before for recall and things like that. So yeah, this is what this is the premise behind advertising, especially when you see billboard ads and you ask yourself, how's that moving me?
And so what's your role in this industry? Are you a programmer? Are you a statistician? What is it?
Yeah, in that world, I was sourcing and looking at different data sets to enhance the targeting capability. So the ad tech world, they didn't invent data brokerage, but they were big consumers of companies that had data sets that were interesting, that could provide an unusual signal or a signal that was a differentiator. And so I came from that angle of the world where I'm out scouting for data sets and talking to companies that maybe they don't even know they've got a data set that's worth anything, and bringing that to market.
So purely on the commercial side, and like I've known people that, they talk about these folks in Madison Avenue that almost as life, it's the Illuminati or something, but I am a little curious, like working in this field for 20 years, did you ever have a moment like, holy shit?
Yeah. So that I had the epiphany, was we are building cohorts based upon these very discrete signals about who they are and what they are likely to do. And at the time, being able to attribute those signals to an actual person, the community, that industry wasn't doing that. They're looking to try to sell to 1,000 people, but you could resolve an intent signal based upon an ad ID, GPS, and I think it's what's important to understand is that the mobile phone changed advertising, because advertising was limited to what you were watching on TV and what you were doing on your browser.
Magazines and
those kinds of things. The mobile phone gave a new foundational understanding of human geography based upon where you go. And that, we called that, when you're offline, what are you doing? Well, you're going to CrossFit, you're going to gun ranges, you're going to a European car dealership, and then we see you at 3 other European car dealerships. You must be in the market for a European car. And resolving those signals and being able to then sell a group of people that are indicating that they are interested in a European import as a very precise cohort group of likely buyers changed everything. Now, what I will tell you is that cat videos don't sell Nikes, and Facebook or Meta learned that really hard when they lost the ad ID 3 years ago. Cost them about $10 billion in over 2 quarters, because that precise, the ability to append your offline patterns of life to a stable identifier. If you're on your mobile device and you go to privacy settings and you say no cross tracking, and you turn off all of your location services, that upended companies like Facebook and how they were doing targeted ads. And that was, again, another change in that industry that drove advertising to new levels of inference and awareness and being able to connect the dots that aren't so obvious to understand intent signals. And don't confuse an advertiser and an adversary. They're doing the same thing. Conversion metrics are a little different.
Right.
But there's not a lot of difference in
How they target.
Yeah.
So tell us the story about how you were talking to a company about ad tech and how JSOC initially approached you.
So I set the stage. I'm at a very bougie hotel doing a presentation to an investor conference of hedge funds. They're quantitative analysts who do nothing but crunch data, looking for signal in that data to feed their black boxes, looking for buy signals that nobody else can see. And so I'm giving this presentation about alternative data, and particularly this new sort of data set that gives high fidelity information about what's going on at locations. And so I wrap up my presentation. I was given a bunch of use cases involving the United States. And as people do when they're presenting and sort of dwelling at the podium, answering questions, passing business cards around. And I see two guys sort of lingering at the side. And I should also say that at a conference like this, it is very Patagonia laden, sweater Patagonia vests and the uniform of the day. But these guys are not dressed like that. And so they approach, and I will tell you that they definitely did not fit into the hedge fund crowd. I'm wondering what are the Hells Angels interested in, because they looked like 1%ers from an MC. But the questions they asked were phenomenal. They were very aware of data. They were very aware of ad tech. But the question that they really had was, we're interested in the use cases that you presented about the United States. Can you do this overseas? Well, sure. Of course we can do. We're advertising in Europe and Middle East, of course. How about sort of the developing world? What do you mean? And they sort of paused, got permission, to reveal some countries. And they said, could you do this in Syria, Libya, or Yemen? And it took me back, and at that point I realized that, okay, these are not hedge fund. These are not hedgies from Stamford, Connecticut.
Ever wake up sweaty, freezing, or just uncomfortable? The temperature in your bedroom can make or break your sleep. That's why I switched to Miracle Made Sheets. They're inspired by NASA technology and use silver-infused temperature-regulating fabric to help you sleep perfectly all night long. Miracle Made Sheets are crafted with NASA-inspired silver-infused fabric that helps regulate your body temperature. Hot sleeper, cold sleeper, it doesn't matter. These sheets will help keep you in the comfort zone all night long. Thanks to their antibacterial silver technology, Miracle Made Sheets stay cleaner and fresher up to 3 times longer than regular sheets. That means fewer odors, fewer wash cycles, and way less laundry. All that hidden bacteria in regular sheets, it can clog your pores and cause breakouts. Miracle Made's antibacterial design helps you sleep cleaner and clearer night after night. Upgrade your sleep or give the gift of better rest. Go to trymiracle.com/house to try Miracle Made Sheets today. You'll save 40%, and when you use promo code HOUSE, you'll get an extra 20% off plus a free 3-piece towel set. They make an amazing gift, and with a 30-day money-back guarantee, there's no risk. That's trymiracle.com/house, code HOUSE at checkout. Thanks to Miracle Made for sponsoring this podcast.
Hey guys, it's Jack. I want to tell you guys about the sponsor for today's show. It's Mando. Mando makes a whole series of male grooming products. They are unique in that they are a deodorant that you can use all over your body, on armpits if you like, but also wherever else you may deem necessary. And I have been using these products for about 3 months now. I've been using the body wash. It's bourbon leather. I've been using their bar of soap, which I really enjoyed, and also their deodorant. And so I exercise a lot and get very sweaty, so I need a deodorant that's going to do the job. And Mando has come through for me. The body wash was great. I actually used all of that. Need to reorder some more. But the bar of soap was also very cool. It was very smooth, actually. So I hope you guys will go and check them out. They have a starter kit that's up there, and they have a special deal for Team House viewers. So the starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. As a special offer for listeners, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack. Use code TEAMHOUSE at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando.
And that began this long relationship with JSOC because they were referenced from the Joint Intelligence Brigade. The one guy, John, was troop commander or something like that. And they were in the they were there scouting for new data sets that would give them fidelity into these war zones for, pick your reason, for targeting. Can we better understand what is going on in this, this polygon area? Can we define how many women, children, who is interacting with this location? And that kicked off a proof of concept, which you mentioned, called Locomotive, which was the combination of location and motive. I came up with that because I, at the time, had a 10-year-old daughter, and I said, I need a name to call this thing, and I can't keep saying location motive because that's just hard to say. So come up with something. And this was pre-Chat GPT days, and like a minute later, she's like, call it Locomotive.
She came up with that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and so I talk about innovation because this is really sort of a 2-tier story, because we were innovating, but it wasn't an innovation initiative. It was, we have hard targets and we need fidelity. Let's get after this. And so it wasn't something where we were just out of the gate, all, fireworks and bells and whistles. There were some struggles. There was a lot of entrenched sort of attitudes, like from SIGINTers who believed that the only way to get this kind of data was to, intercept it, which, you can fly around, you can drive around, you can intercept a lot of stuff trying to, invoking yourself as a cell tower. And if you own the airspace, yeah, you can do that at scale. And I had to repeatedly say, as I was being called a snake oil salesman and a charlatan, like to my face, I would have to say, I didn't hack, engineer, intercept, or steal this data. I bought it. And that took a long time for the community to get their head around, like, okay, so that's not intelligence. You bought it. Like, we need to go and spy on people, and we need to intercept in order for it to be an int.
Exactly, yeah. And I think they struggled with OSINT for quite a while. But for that reason, they're like, well, it's not classified. What is it? What do we do with it?
Yeah, same deal. And this is, where they get wrapped around the axle trying to define what some of these things are. Who cares? It's data that's useful. It's data that's useful to the mission. So figure out where it fits. Now, I will say that in some of these, like we were on the clock. You're at JSOC.
So you're brought in as a contractor.
I'm brought in as a...
Show us that you can make this work in 3 months or something.
I had a little longer than 3 months, but you know how it is at JSOC. Like, you've got one shot You know, like, and they are unforgiving and they are hard customer, right? And so, you know, this wasn't something where it was like, I can show you where all your HVTs are tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. But that was sort of the expectation, like, oh, this is magic. So trying to build a use case that they could understand. Like, you need to understand that we're not really going after the HVT. We're going after the areas, his centers of gravity, to look and better understand what's going on there.
Right.
I needed a use case to show them that. So one night, as I'm on the clock and like, I don't want to blow this, I draw a geofence around an area on Fort Bragg that is not JSOC, not Fort Bragg large, a particular location at Fort Bragg, which is not, you know, it's everybody knows where that compound is. And when you look down on it and you see all the red roofs, you know what you're looking at. So I geofenced that area. I should also say that I'm doing all of this in a highly secure area in between my master bedroom and my daughter's bedroom in my home office. Draw the geofence around the Delta compound, hit play to see where the devices go, where they were before, where they were after. And in Syria, I get a cluster of devices
That correlate with what you were seeing at Fort Bragg.
because they're in Syria at this facility in Syria. They were at Fort Bragg. They have consistent dwell time between these two places. And I pulled it back a little further and was able to track the devices that started at Fort Bragg as my seed location. Now they're in this place in Syria making cement. And I bring them, I track these devices to residences in a town called Southern Pines, North Carolina. Now, if you are part of the Fort Bragg community, you know that Southern Pines is a bedroom community where if you can afford to live there because you make a little extra money.
I'm surprised you didn't just put a geofence around O'Donnell's. And
that would have been too easy. And I'm coming up with the homes of operators who are at this, at what we call LCF, Lafarge Cement Factory. And I'm like, this is interesting. I had no a priori knowledge. I wasn't looking.
yeah, you weren't read on to what they were doing over there.
I was not looking for a French company's, a French conglomerate cement facility in Syria, nor was I even aware that Southern Pines had any connection to Delta. I kind of package it up. I don't really know what I have here. Drive down to Bragg. I think you should see something. I don't know what it is. And I've got my PowerPoints and my handouts. And it's one of those moments where if I had known, it's the kind of thing where you say, do I have your fucking attention now? Because this was not an overt forward operating base. And the residences and who they belonged to, they were like, I showed pictures and people were like, that's Sergeant Major's house.
Yeah.
That's.
I imagine this brief went over like a lead balloon.
That was like, room gets cleared. My badge went from, yellow to black or something, everything got a little bit more intense at that point. And I got an audience with CG and sort of explained to him how I did it, what I was doing. SIGINTers weren't as hostile towards me from that point forward, but that was sort of the moment when, like, the next meeting that I did briefing a much larger group, my contact down there introduces me as, he's like, we've got the subject matter expert in this stuff. And I'm looking around like, who, is there somebody else? And it was like, oh, that's me. And so over the course of 10 years, got involved with signature management, identity management, the various working groups, whether it's up north, down south, at the beach, in Tampa, all over the place, trying to sort of corral this signature management problem, this ubiquitous technical surveillance problem that you've had really great guests on before talking about it. And, the community sort of approaches it from the perspective of, well, we just need to educate everybody about this risk and really overload them with ad tech stuff and really get them to understand what's going on. But you're an operator, you only have so many cognitive cycles to process things. It's like, tell me what I need to know. Tell me how we defeat this. And for the last 10 years, I've been explaining this isn't something you defeat. You are up against, before we even talk about an adversary, you're up against an $8 trillion duopoly, Google and Apple. They support a nearly $1 trillion advertising ecosystem. They are both unified in a mission to predict behavior of humans at planetary scale. So right out of the gate, you are trying to defeat nearly $10 trillion of market cap with your mission center and 3 dudes who learned about ad tech 3 days ago.
The Leviathan.
Yes. So right out of the gate, the deck is stacked. This is not something you defeat. This is something that you figure out how to operate within. And yes, Tradecraft, yes, the things we do out in the field, we cannot hide inside the embassy, we cannot hide because of UTS. We have to figure out where are the seams where we can operate? Where are the gaps that we can operate? And I think we're at a point now where the community has stopped referring to UTS as this existential threat, which, if you think about words, existential means unless you solve this, your reason for existing is no longer.
Yeah, you're done.
You're done. So I wouldn't describe it as an existential threat. I would describe it as, an operating condition that we need to figure out. And there are fewer mitigations that one can apply. It's more about interventions. And the number one question that I get from the operational community is, how do I get myself out of commercial data? And if we think about it from a first principles perspective, all of this risk starts with the devices we carry and all of the data that they emit that tell a story about who we are. And particularly for the operational community, it's not so much what you're exposing when you're on the X or doing an act, because those are different scenarios. It's everything that happens when you're home, when you're just like you're working your CIA and you're working headquarters, but you're running around DC, going to sites, doing stuff, meeting with people. If I'm an adversary and I'm interested in that cohort, I'm very interested in what you're doing when you're not on the X or engaged in an operational act. All of that is very useful information. And when we think about UTS, the shift, and I hate to be somebody that's like AI is going to change the world, but the shift that is underway is, firstly, UTS, a lot of cameras and hardware and infrastructure,
biometrics,
all of that stuff. But I'm not convinced that our primary adversary has developed an integration scheme where all of this is manifesting itself in a Minority Report-like environment. They collect a lot of data, they being the CCP is who I'm talking about.
Right, but do they have like an OPSEC where they're correlating all of this?
And in there, if you think about them culturally, they believe that I'm collecting a lot, that means I have a lot of intelligence. And they're collecting a bunch of raw data.
Yeah.
And what are they doing with it? I'm not convinced that they have, developed this this prescient
The panopticon.
the panopticon, but they are collecting. But what AI will do, and just think about your own use of some of these platforms. If you think about all of the data that is on your device, and you think about it from the perspective of an operator, case officer, the population, I'm going to use this example because this is possible. The population in the United States of people who power down their phone 3 or 4 times a week, twice a week, who power down their phone at all is very, very small. You leave your phone on at night, you're not powering it down during the day. The way in which apps are collecting data on your device, you install an app and you've basically given it permission to interrogate the entire device. Do you know Apple, the privacy device? Apple gives its consumers 2 selectors to suppress data in its privacy settings. The ad ID, you can click that off, and location data. Those are the 2 selectors that Apple permits its consumers to invoke privacy. So you have an app on your phone. Maybe it's not collecting your ad ID because you're not allowing that. And maybe it can't get your GPS because you've turned that off. So it's going to look at all of the other telemetry that your device is collecting. It's going to pull it, prepare it to exfil off your device. And when it does that, and that's a very normal behavior between an app, it needs to exchange data for functionality, but it's also looking at all sorts of other extraneous components that have nothing to do with functionality. And it's pulling it, it encrypts it before it transmits.
So it uses my phone as an encryption device.
And you have no awareness of what it's collected, what it's done, and why. So if you are somebody in the community and you're powering down your phone 2 or 3 times a week, and that is anomalous to the rest of the working population globally, let alone Washington, D.C., but in Washington, D.C., if I'm interested because I have awareness that there's policy that you can get off the internet that says on your way 1 mile away from a black site or whatever you want to call it, power down your phone. That is doctrine. If I'm interested in everybody in the DC area that does that 2 or 3 times a week, I now have
Everyone.
500 targets, 300 targets, 50 targets. And that, instead of looking at the population of DC and trying to figure out who's in the business, now I have the probability of who's in the business.
I mean, they deal with it overseas too. Like if the bad guys catch you, putting your phone in a Faraday bag or something, like who the fuck does that?
Yeah.
A normal tourist isn't behaving like that.
Right. So this is something that's interesting. And this is just on the commercial side. So a company will, let's use a real scenario here. You travel overseas, and you're traveling with a special phone or a phone that's your travel phone. So there's nothing, let's just assume there is nothing about you that anybody could glean from your phone. And it's a normal phone. It's not a op phone. It's a normal phone, but it's your travel phone.
Your work phone.
So you check into your hotel, and the hotel knows nothing about you. You're not part of the rewards program. What the hotel or the adversary will do is sort of a cold start. What do cohorts that have come in from the States who stay at this type of hotel, what do we expect them to do when they are in our country? Let's model that and be able to do that while they're here looking for these anomalous behaviors. So if you think about, all right, I'm gonna try to defeat UTS, I'm gonna try to defeat the machine with a travel phone, or they're looking at it from that perspective, and they're ahead of you. So how do you function? How do you do do your job without feeling like somebody is constantly watching you? Because they are. That is part of you have to accept that.
Right.
Observation is ambient. You're going to be observed. You are not going to go black. You can do an SDR for 12 hours. They're not, they're just going to replay the tape. And they're going to let AI show me everybody who went, walking around for 8 hours and, did these types of stops. Show me all of those devices. That's the power of AI from an inference capability. And that all comes from the devices we're carrying. So it doesn't have to be an overt, signature. It can be a very non-obvious, very slight, subtle permutation in that data that exceeds the baseline of expectation. And that, to me, that's what UTS is going to look like, because that's what the commercial advertising world is doing. So the primitives are already available. Now we just need to sort of change the names to make it for UTS.
So if you're trying to stay off the grid, so to speak, how do you work with this technology or flow in that technology while not pinging up on someone's radar?
So a couple different ways of doing that. So if we think about it from a first principles perspective, the number one thing that we need to figure out, if commercial data, if telemetry is the problem, we need to figure out how to limit the amount of telemetry that we are making available by virtue of the phones we carry. Like de facto, let's cut out all the bullshit about persona management and signature management and all that. Let's figure out how to reduce the amount of data that we are willingly given.
Right.
And that's not something that just an operator or an IO should be. That is like a human dignity issue.
Right.
And this capability is something that, whether you're, in the community or not, this is privacy. Being able to carry a phone that works, functions, and does all of the great things that phones do without it being this constant
spy device.
Yeah. So that's the first thing that we need to tackle from a posture of what do we accept as humans about what we're willing to share. And you want to sort of tune up my adrenaline, tell me, well, I have nothing to hide, so I don't care. Okay, that assumes you know who's looking. Ask Lindsey Graham whether, Lindsey, I don't know whether you all are, I'm going to attack him a little bit here, because Lindsey Graham was telling us all back in the early days of the Patriot Act that if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to worry about.
You think he's got something to worry about?
Until Arctic Frost and the FBI decided to pull his CDRs, and he decided, well, that's bullshit. I'm going to sue you. $500,000 per incident. Mr. I have nothing to hide. You shouldn't worry about the government, the NSA collecting your data, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Not for me, but for thee.
Yeah.
And this just happened a couple months ago when he was told, Kash Patel disclosed that I think it was 8 senators were wrapped up in the Arctic Frost pull. And, the indignation and the outrage was palpable. And it's different. Like, there was a warrant to go pull their data. But at the same time, Mr. Senator, if you've got nothing to hide, what do you care? Maybe you have something to hide.
Yeah, a little cautious about politicians telling us things like that.
It's the kind of thing where we talk about the risk of data and adversaries, but who's the adversary? Is it an advertiser? Do I want an advertiser to have this intimate knowledge of who I am and what I'm doing? How does that benefit me? And the more we allow convenience, these frictionless sort of technology interfaces to make it really easy for us, every point where friction has been alleviated is a point where your data now is available because we've eliminated those fire breaks.
You know, as you're talking, I just got me thinking. I mean, when I think of ubiquitous surveillance and the panopticon and all this sort of thing, I think big countries, United States, China, Russia. But as you point out, you bought this data on the commercial market. But that means that countries like Vietnam, Rwanda could be operationalizing this data against us potentially.
100%. Because there are no guardrails. There's not a, you don't need to, send a note to the
What, do you got something to hide, Mike?
Yeah. There are no guardrails. Anybody can do it. It's gotten a little tighter, and companies have had some headline exposure by selling data to bail bondsmen and the private investigators.
ICE recently.
That kind. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And this is the hard question, because we of course want our law enforcement to have every available tool at their disposal to go after criminals, bad guys.
Yeah.
That has been that's being overseen by a judge, and
Right.
It is lawful. But when it becomes too easy to be able to look deeply into a potential suspect's life, we've got a slippery slope.
Right.
And I've worked with one of the early customers of VISR was the FBI, another special agent, street agent, not a bureaucrat, street agent, the kind of guy that you want when you think of an FBI agent. This is what 6'5" Marine, can recite the Constitution, came up in the FBI. His father was an agent, but it's what it's how we develop faith in these institutions. Right. When that faith is broken, then it becomes difficult for me to say this should be a no-brainer that they have all of these tools, because I know that there is abuse and corner cutting.
Right.
And that is a problem for me.
Yeah, I can definitely see the double-edged sword. Like, on one hand, you want them to have all the tools to catch internet predators and stuff like that.
We can all agree on that.
Yeah. But then there's, when you're taking those shortcuts and you're not getting a judicially signed warrant, it becomes an issue.
So if you think about it this way, if you were in the DC area around January 6th, 2020, you there with your family, you weren't near the Capitol, but you were there with your family, and you bought some souvenirs or you used a credit card to get into the Smithsonian, chances are the FBI had a look at you.
Yeah.
They eliminated you probably quickly, but they were looking at you. And that data was provided willfully by various banks. Did you know? Did you authorize it? And that gets into the who owns the data. It's not really your data. The credit card data isn't yours. Your cell phone data is not yours.
So let's talk a little bit about how the program evolved from Locomotive to VISR.
Yep.
What is VISR? What was the next incarnation?
Yep. So think about Locomotive as a proof of concept where it was very limited, and that's where I was trying to just demonstrate how this could work as a capability. Proved that, and we upgraded it to something called VISR, Virtual Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance. Kind of a stick in the face to the SIG-ers who didn't believe that this was even possible. So we were doing ISR type work virtually. I was buying the location data. And if you think about mobile location data at the time, your device was probably giving an event, a location event, once every 12 seconds. So not quite as persistent as a TTL device stuck on the back of a car in terms of seeing the routes,
right.
But pretty close in terms of being able to see how people were moving about. And so the program was designed to be an interagency program. JSOC was the primary sponsor, but it became an interagency program where we were selling this data set. We were buying the data sets, and the license for that data gave me rights to make it available to the entire U.S. government. So I didn't have to have one agency buying it. It was like one purchase. It was very, very efficient and a great deal for the taxpayer. And we created basically a government cloud environment where data would come in from our suppliers. We would move it over to a classified cloud environment, and we had 7 different agencies participating. They had to fund and they had to pay, but if you think like, here's the budget, everybody had to pitch in. It was, kind of an interagency working group, and but it was designed to be efficient so that we weren't buying the same ad ID 70 different times, which is how we're doing it now.
And I imagine these agencies are all using this ad tech data that you're purchasing in different ways to accomplish different things.
Absolutely.
What was sort of like the difference between how like the FBI versus CIA versus JSOC will use these data sets?
So my first case that I worked for the Bureau was Stephen Paddock, the Vegas shooter. There was questions about possible transnational terrorism because his wife was Filipino.
I remember
he
this.
Had traveled to the Philippines. Yeah. And so we did a workup on Stephen Paddock.
He was very like opaque, very kind of like mysterious.
Very opaque.
Yeah.
I know that there are a lot of, I don't know what his motive, I don't know that. I don't think anybody really does.
Yeah.
I don't believe that there was a conspiracy because there were Saudis in the hotel, because there are lots of Saudis in Vegas all the time.
Yeah.
But I don't mean to stir up your listeners.
No. I mean, I'm interested in what the results.
So Stephen Paddock had 2 residences in Vegas, two properties. So we were looking at those. Saw no unusual co-location, co-presence. We would see like the UPS delivery guy, the FedEx guy. He had a landscape. We had one device that was showing up at both properties. It was his landscape. It was the guy that cut his grass. But we looked at him hard because that was the only, we're seeing this. He lives in a kind of a, potential high crime area. What's this all about? It was the guy that cuts his grass. This was very early, and so you have Bureau analysts, I'm sort of over their shoulder looking at this stuff, and all of a sudden somebody's like, holy shit. There was a device that they were looking at that had also spent time at Redstone Arsenal, where you learn how to make a bomb, or
and it was connected to Paddock in some capacity.
I was like, this is if this is what it is. Wait a second. Let's have a look. Look at the date. Look at the time. It was your own EOD guy. Because now that same device, he was in Texas. I'm like, is there anything going on in Texas? Yeah, there's a letter bomber. I'm like, that's your guy. So you have to watch what you're doing, because this kind of stuff, you're seeing it, you want to find, just take a breath. And there's no connection here with somebody that's got intimate explosive experience. This is your own technician, your own EOD guy that probably didn't clear the house before the rest of the forensics team came in. So those are the types of things. From a law enforcement perspective, ad tech is not the best. It's not the best use of that data, because law enforcement will come in and they will say, we have an incident that occurred on this date at this time. Show me everything that was there when that happened. And that requires an app to be functioning, to be broadcasting, to be pinging location. It's a very treacherous terrain to try to put a device at a specific location at a specific time. Unlike when you're doing tower dumps, you're getting like a range.
Right.
This is why it's not the best use case for incident resolution and investigation. If you're looking at show me, I've done a lot of like MS-13 type work, show me that type of cohort, where they go, what are their patterns of life. No different than if you're looking for
It's more of a big data
HVT
tool.
It is take a big look at the cohort, where they live, what are their centers of gravity, what don't we know about where they're going on some kind of regular basis. It's excellent for that type of work. But to try to go and like locate a device at a centroid, very difficult to do. And agencies have tried to do it, and they've sort of come up like, well, it doesn't work. No, it's not the right application for that type of stuff. And then, but on the intelligence side, a lot of focus on our own community, OPSEC, signature management, help us understand what our risks are, how do we improve. And then in the ISIS days, a lot of targeting there on some pretty high value.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you about that. Look, what was the year that Locomotive got started?
So we're going back 2016.
Okay.
And it was full operational capability was around 2018.
And so ISIS is a thing at this moment. This is a big priority for the United States government. And I remember someone telling me a story about early on in the war when we went and wiped out the Khorasan group, like very quickly with CIA intelligence, airstrikes, and did the deal. My understanding, that was one of the first times that open source intelligence was really used. And it was because there was a bunch of younger analysts in these offices that were like, hey, maybe we can do this and this and that. And sure enough, it worked.
Yeah. That was where they were tagging pictures. You had
they were going after those guys on Facebook and stuff. It was pretty funny.
Yeah.
So you get it there, 2016, 2018, it's really up and running. Kind of like, what are you seeing as far as like the evolution of the programming? Like, how are the guys, the boots on the ground, kind of taken to it?
So adoption, or hey, can we get some of that ad tech stuff from the operator, from the unit level? We got great feedback on that, because I'm giving them like slant information. I've got women, children, based upon the apps that they're using, the times, the devices.
Shit. Okay.
I'm not giving names. I don't have names, but I can tell you as you are about to assault this compound, where the guy cried like a baby, that compound, I can tell you how many women and children there are before you begin at the time you're about to engage. I'm giving you updated information. Like, you've got anywhere between 12 and 18. I was off by one non-combatants in this compound. I was off by one because one was with him and went down with him as a non-combatant. But I'm giving that type of fidelity at that ground level, which, you're an operator. You're happy if somebody can tell you if the door fucking opens this way or that way.
Right.
I'm telling you how many women and children are in this compound you're about to assault. So,
and I imagine when the operators get ground truth and they go and hit the target and like, wow, this was like very accurate, actually, that they probably took to it. I would think. Yeah.
I mean, it's, again, because this, our guys don't want to engage innocent people. They want to know if they need to back off a little bit or give some time for them to get out, because that's the type of people they are. They're not going in looking to just So
Yeah, and I mean, if there's no civilians on target, maybe the answer is a JDAM for that one. You know?
yeah, why exactly? But this is the type of thing where, and this is something Americans should know. We have a very capable unit that chose to not pause, but just, hey, if there is information that helps us
Yeah.
configure how we are assaulting this, or that we need to give the TERP more time on the
The bullhorn.
megaphone,
Yeah.
come out or you will be killed. You know, if we need to do that, we're going to do that. We're not just going in guns blazing because, you know, there were like 4 children under the age of 4. And they all came out. And as the non-combatants are coming out, they are giving ground truth. They are confirming where he is, what he's got, and who he's with. So those types of things were the, you know, and again, I'm doing this in my highly secure operating, my forward deployed talk in Vienna, Virginia.
I remember around this time hearing some consternation that using OSINT methods, which I'm guessing that was you, that they had identified like hundreds of targets in Syria. And there's a lot of frustration. It was not because of the technology, more the policy side, that the guys felt like they're being kind of held back from actioning
100%.
targets. Yeah.
So, and this is an excellent point from a policy perspective, because the people who make policy don't have a fucking clue.
What? Really?
They don't. They're making, like, they're working on, you know, how do we define commercial data from open source data? We're beyond that.
Yeah.
Our adversary is well beyond that. So I think if you just look at the way in which TikTok was handled, we just don't have a policy class.
Yeah, I mean, the average age of our members of Congress are, you know, almost nursing home ready. No fault to them.
Yeah.
Everyone ages, but
They're making they're doing reels about the, you know, disparaging TikTok on TikTok. It just doesn't make any sense. But I think that we are in the operating environment is highly technical now. So we need people at the policy level who, they don't have to be experts in this
But
stuff,
they have to listen to the brief.
understand
Yeah.
what they're dealing with.
yeah.
And I think that
And by comparison, the military average age is very young, which helps, I think, with this sort of thing.
I will tell you, when I would be briefing, I would look, and if my room were mostly NCOs, I was good. I knew that it was going to be a productive brief. When it wasn't NCOs, and there were others in the brief, I knew that it was going to be a shit show.
With the Sharpies on the map. And
I mean, and it never failed. Like, you know, and I was never in the military, so I don't do all that sir shit. You know, so like some fucking captain is going to come in and start sort of pushing his rank, telling me, you know, how these things should be, and I'm like, that's firstly not a thing, Captain. Secondly, I don't really, you know, where are you going with this? Because you're describing fantasy when this is not fantasy. I've had those moments.
yeah, Army officers don't like to be told they're wrong.
It is the culture I feel for the sergeant majors.
Thoughts and prayers.
Yeah. Yeah. Make sure your helmet is on forward and your nods are, you know, those things that you need to be seeing this way shouldn't be on the face in the back of your head. But I think that when we think about data, just from a national perspective, we have zero posture in terms of privacy. We have lots of privacy laws on the books. We have a law that's, you know, the do not sell my data to bad guys law. But if you look at what it protects or what it controls, it's like, yeah, that might have had some teeth 10 years ago, but today it's I can be in compliance and still do everything that you have legislated is illegal. And I think that that's just because we have people that don't quite understand and don't get into the weeds of this. Whereas I don't navel gaze China, but their technocrats understand the value of data, because their data does not leave their shore unless a guy like me walks it out within a brown paper bag. I mean, that's the truth.
Yeah.
There's no reciprocity. They don't participate. We are not getting WeChat data the way that they're getting Instagram data.
And I have even when you find out about hackers that are selling hacked data sets and things like that, and I'm not in that world, but I mean, I've heard a lot about like hacked data sets out of Russia, out of Iran. I actually haven't heard any out of China, but again, that's not my area. So
their laws have teeth.
you're going to the gulag.
You're never going to be seen again.
Yeah.
So the truth is that there are black markets where you can get
Some stuff.
But that's almost like we need to have case officers who know how to do that.
Yeah, go and buy it.
We need to have Knox who know how to show up at a data conference and do these
It reminds me of when we had Jim Lawler on the show, who was big at interdicting terrorists who were trying to buy fissile material and trying to build a nuclear weapon.
He's infamous.
And I believe he teaches a whole course, actually. I'd have to ask Jim about this. I believe he teaches a course teaching intelligence officers how to attain a certain level of technical know-how to be able to talk to scientists and technical people in foreign countries. And I remember him saying something that, engineers love to tell you about their job and how it works.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
There's nothing. An engineer will not suffer somebody who comes from the soft sciences, But to be able to navigate those markets,
you have to have fluency in that language.
Yeah. You have to be able to know the difference between
Yeah, I wouldn't.
and that's important. And that's kind of that skill set. Who was we need PhDs who can win a bar fight.
Right. Yeah.
Whoever that. Donovan. Yes. We need PhDs who can win a bar fight and write a little bit of code.
It's also interesting, I think, this combination of high tech and low tech that we've kind of touched on a little bit. But using this ad tech and all the other cool things we have to get data. But then it sounds like in some cases, at least, that's really providing a vector to put a guy on the ground and do that terminal guidance. Not necessarily it's a lethal operation. It might be an intelligence operation, but I mean, do you see that kind of being like the future of intelligence work?
I think it's a component. It's hard to say. I think all of this, when we think about a target and how we develop that target, I think that the data that is available, whether it's, and this could even be in sort of target spotting, everything should run through a first level, what do we know? What can we understand about the motives, intentions, the philosophy of this individual or group of individuals before we even before we do the bump, before we engage.
Right.
Or if we've already identified this person and we need to have his good friend be a peer, how do we align our people with this target so that that relationship, it's almost like a dating app where the algorithm has said, you two are a match. When I was needing to sort of demonstrate value, so I'm a hockey player, playing men's leagues around DC, and just as a test, I wanted to see if anybody from the Russian embassy plays in men's league hockey. And sure enough, I find 3 Russians from the Russian embassy who go to my rink to do something called lunch puck. It's like 12 o'clock. You just go out and
Shoot some pucks.
You split up everybody and you just sort of play, right? Lunch puck. And they're at my rink. So, and I know that they're there, you know, a couple times a week. It's sporadic. Sometimes it's a Monday, sometimes it's a Thursday. So I went for 3 days, and on the second day, I'm in the locker room with 3 Russians from the embassy, putting on our skates, and I'm like, "Are you guys Russian?" You know, and you could smell the cigarette smoke before they even got into the locker room. But here I am, there to be at that point in time where they are.
Right. The technology
The
helped
technology
put
enabled
you in the room.
put me
Yeah.
and I know how to put on hockey equipment. I know how to lace my skates. I know how to talk in the locker room.
Right.
There was no, you know, like, who is this guy with all the new equipment who can't skate, who just so happens to be, you know, really interested in me being Russian. I had been to Moscow playing hockey, so I was able to be very
build
conversational, build rapport, but I knew they were going to be there. It only took me 2 days.
Right. No, that exactly answers the question that I was asking, that combination of high tech and low tech.
And it's you know, why wouldn't we want to try to do that sort of matchmaking?
Yeah, why wouldn't you use the full breadth of our capabilities that we've developed?
And those are the kinds of things that we can look at, you know, the entire cadre of case officers. And we need somebody with specific skill, somebody that's got a double E or a chemical, and you know, he's got a chemical degree.
Oh, an electrical engineer.
A double, you know, we need that type of person to go and let's be able to
Right.
put them into the mix
Right.
faster, and not wait for or just do it based upon, well, you know, now he's going off to this post, and you know, there's no connectivity to who we're going after. That's the kind of thing that all this data is really good to get us ahead of the game.
Hey everyone, I want to tell you about my new novel, The Most Dangerous Man, out in June. It is a novel about a regimental reconnaissance company soldier who gets kidnapped while he's on a mission to West Africa. And when he wakes up, he finds that he is now being hunted for sport by a group of tech billionaires through the wilds of West Africa. This book is based on stories that I heard over the years about safari guides taking wealthy clients hunting for poachers on game reserves in Africa. I took that and I took a century-old short story, The Most Dangerous Game, and modernized it. And the product is this book, which I think will feel contemporary and resonate with audiences today. Thank you, and please check it out. So back to the Syria stuff before we move on. What were your observations as that campaign really got up and running and the VISR program got up and running too?
So I don't know if this is answering your question, but so I was, what do we call it? Compound Delta?
Sure.
So I'm down in one of the bays where, you know, like not quite the team room, but like,
Where the squadron is. Yeah.
you know, all of the laddering and, you know, like their garage. And I'm standing on an ISIS flag. And one of the operators who had just, you know, he's like, "We won the war." And I'm like, he's like, "Yep, we just brought that back." And I'm like, "Okay, like we just won the war." And it was a few months later that we had, you know, announced that we'd basically won the war, but
Raqqa fell and all that, yeah.
all of that.
Yeah.
That group had just rolled in, and I'm like standing on this black ISIS flag. I didn't even realize that I was, but those are the types of things like,
You're like, yeah, holy shit.
you know, what the contribution, you know, did it help? I think so. It made it so that we had more awareness of who we were going up against.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about that too, and I know ultimately it's the JAGs that have to look at all this stuff from a legal perspective, but I was wondering if there's any issues with like title authorities, or if it ever came up, like we're using civilian data for military targeting. I remember I heard a story once that the PsyOps guys wanted to do a campaign in Syria using targeted Facebook ads. So we're going to target people specifically in this part of Syria with our PsyOp, virtual leaflets, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it got shut down. They wouldn't let them do it because they're like the perception when it went up. I guess it got briefed to Congress at one point, and they said something like they thought they were going to hack Facebook.
Yeah.
And they're like,
I'm familiar with
okay,
this.
so you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep. So the first question. So, yep, we did. There was a JAG, and I just overwhelmed him with.
Right.
And
this is
he
all
just-
unprecited shit that he has to figure out.
He was just like, make the man stop, sign off. I mean, it was, and he just wanted to, he was not trying to relitigate the Constitution of the United States. He was like, what's the...
Because it's overseas, I imagine it's fairly straightforward.
It was much, I will tell you, let me answer your question with, the FBI 7th floor shut us down. Like, I get the call from the special agent who's 6'5", who's like, nope, terminate us, decommission our licenses, we've been deactivated.
Because they feel there's legal
Because of the legal issues. Yep. And they still don't quite
trying to figure it out.
have fidelity around that. Which, so that did happen. It was like the rug got, pulled right out from underneath us. We were in the middle of a bunch of stuff and they got shut down. Like, you are done. You are not to do this anymore. So not so much on the DoD side. Only when we're looking at their own people is there a little bit of issue.
Right.
And I'm like, you know what? I'm not looking at anybody in particular. I am not looking at PII. I am looking at this constellation of cohorts
For force protection.
for force
basically.
protection.
Yeah.
Force Pro, like, that's absolutely the right use case. But nothing about what we're doing is, I'm gonna,
You're not looking up the guy's porn habits?
not for those use cases. That's on the private side. I will do that. But on the DoD side, particularly around the ISIS timeframe, that was not a big
Hurdle.
friction point.
Yeah.
No. But again, credit to the command
Yeah.
force, looking at this and saying, this is great, but this is not how he's describing this dot on the map. That is not, authorization to engage. Right. And that was, and I was
Yeah, you need more.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. You need to correlate it and other things, but
Other ints.
if
yeah.
that gives us, hey, we're going to go and
It's a lead.
TFO is going to go and build a constellation of
Yeah, yeah.
sensors to, monitor that place, then mission accomplished. Like, we gave you a target that
Yeah.
you didn't know about.
Yeah, hell yeah.
And so, yeah, a lot of really good work with TFO on this too. They were all in.
Aggressive.
They got it. Like, it was to the point, like, are we still playing around these stupid fucking TTL? Like, get that guy with the funny hair to come in and, just stop it. So a lot of those types of conversations down at Belvoir.
And did you have some visibility on the PsyOps stuff that I was mentioning? It sounded
Just
like you knew what I
in
was talking
terms
about.
of, they were, so it's very difficult to deploy an advertisement, an ad impression to 10 devices, 20 devices. You need to be able to do it to 1,000 in order for it to run through the system. And so I was just trying to explain to them, like, unless you
It's a mass blast.
have, some infrared gun where you're going to like point it and shoot the ad, this is, you just need to open up the aperture a little bit, but trying to put trying to deploy an ad to a very targeted group is difficult to even know that you accomplished that target set, because it just if you have to understand how that ad goes from the supply to the demand side and those connections, and it's not just place an ad on.
The concern, of course, is always that it's lawful for us to use psyops on our adversaries, but we don't want to subject the American public, even inadvertently, because if you're running a psyop campaign on the internet, well, presumably anybody can access that, right? And in my view, I guess you could call it my opinion for now, I think that's what happened with President Trump talking about the discombobulator ray in Venezuela. I think that might have been some information that we introduced into the area of operations.
Possibly.
Yeah. But when we talk about like running a campaign like that on Facebook, I mean, I understand it's a shotgun blast, but it's a geographical area. Like no one in the United States is going to see it, right?
You can target it that way. What you're really trying to, when you're developing the target, the audience, it's the contextual signals first, and then sort of the location second, because a campaign just based purely on location, because there's a lot of bleed over, because you're not, there's no way to be absolutely precise that you're not exceeding.
But I mean, it's the same. And I mean, I understand like you have to make this make sense for policymakers. But I mean, when you do a leaflet drop, it's not precise.
Which is, again, it's like, well, can't this just be like a leaflet drop where we're going to fly the C-130 over and we're just going to push it out over, and it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
If you look at the supposition about the Russian hacking of Facebook ads, where they spent $250,000 and there were like 10 impressions, and the impressions, if you look at the actual ad, I don't know that even the dumbest American would have been fooled or hoodwinked into thinking that the ad was real. So when you do these things, it has to look and feel like a real ad.
Right.
And the moderation teams at Meta and the platforms are looking for, okay, who are you? What are you advertising? Have you advertised before? They're being very careful about suppressing what is not legitimate advertising. So,
do you think they've gotten good at, or do they, these social media companies try to suppress like foreign disinformation campaigns that are coming into the United States? Like that became a big issue after 2016.
If the model has been trained to be able to recognize that something is clearly foreign disinformation and it can suppress it, okay, it has to look like something that it's seen before.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes in from a new channel, or the words are different, or the configuration is different, and it looks legitimate, how do you suppress that at scale? It's very difficult to do. And if it's been amplified 10,000 times, how do you stop that? I think they put a lot of lip service to it, that they're moderation teams and they're looking, but I just don't know how they can be 100% confident that they are impervious to that kind of stuff. I don't, because at some point the real information gets moderated out. We've seen that.
Right.
Again, I think that's a slippery slope too, when you start trying to arbitrate what's real, what's not. Have some trust in your users. We don't all need to be protected from,
I don't know, man. I when I log on to Facebook, I see the old folks flipping out over clearly AI generated pictures.
See, that's you shouldn't be logging into Facebook. I don't.
Well, yeah, you're right. Yeah, but presumably hundreds of tens of millions of people do.
This is one of those. I guess I would hear the mental model that I attached to that is I wonder if they had these types of conversations back when the printing press became a thing, and Ben Franklin, under his pseudonym, was pushing out shit posts because he could. Was there a moderation team sitting in Philadelphia trying to figure out how to shut him down?
I'm sure there was. King George was trying to shut that down.
Probably. So I think that this is one of those things that it's going to be one of the things that we have to deal with. Propaganda is not new, and we should probably, as a country, maybe moderate our indignation over foreign meddling.
Yeah.
Unless we're going to stop foreign meddling.
Yeah, the game is the game. But I do expect the United States government to proactively fight against, enemy propaganda.
I think so. So, you ever done I was trying to figure out the origination of Death to America, the Iranian chants. Like, when did they just decide to start chanting Death to America?
Was it 79 or 80?
Well, it goes back farther than that.
Okay.
If you think about it, goes back to 52, 53 when Kermit Roosevelt, Kermit's coup, when British Petroleum was like, hey, the duly elected president of Iran wants to nationalize oil fields. How dare he? And you guys need to do something about it. And the Dulles brothers snapped into action, sent Kermit over, and overthrew the government, giving Iran the Shah, which then, over 20 plus years, created this antipathy towards the United States, because you wouldn't want some foreign government picking and choosing your leader. It would piss me off too. So, the influence, the campaigns, and if you think about the way that influence campaign was lodged, but going back to the 50s, it wasn't technical, but surely the information, the disinformation, allegations of corruption and all sorts of things to dislodge a duly elected president from his post.
Yeah, pisses some people off.
I think so. Anyway, that was I went offline there.
It's all right. It's topical. It's topical to world events right now. I guess the other thing I'd like to swing back a little bit to is like the signature reduction, I guess is what we'd call it, the defensive aspects. And what are you able to say about, kind of where we are today in helping our clandestine personnel remain clandestine?
So that is the $1 million question. So I think that we still have a ways to go in understanding that going black isn't what it used to be, and accepting the constraints of the world we live in, the $8 trillion duopoly, the $1 trillion advertising economy, all providing the primitives for UTS that go beyond just observing us. So if your premise is I need to operate without being observed, I don't know, you're going to be operating in the jungle. I don't know, you're not going to be operating anywhere, in a city. So accept that universal truth that it is no longer about trying to evade observation. It is the model, that behavioral model that you need to worry about. And there are things that we can do that are real and not hocus pocus, like playing with your phone, configuring your phone to at least minimize or mitigate some of that data that's revealing what our intentions are. But it's almost like, we treated UTS or signatures almost like IEDs, where we went and stood up the IED defeat organization,
right.
JIDO, and spent $10 billion to discover that we just need more dogs. This is not something to defeat, it's something to operate within. And understanding how to operate within means, how do I operate where I have a phone, because that's normal, but I am going to recognize that the thresholds of my actions under the umbrella of AI makes it far easier for an adversary to intervene as opposed to this episodic surveillance. So that goes back to my point, like data it all starts with the device. It starts with the device that you carry every day to the soccer game, to the headquarters, whatever you're doing, because that is revealing who you are, and you're not operational. So it starts there with the device that you carry every day as a means of pushing back against the machine and being able to maneuver, whether it's operational or just as a person, without your intention being predictable at every moment based upon the orientation of your phone or the battery level of your phone. So I'm starting to see a little bit of daylight, like, all right, we're not trying to defeat this anymore. How do we operate within it? How do we understand what a cohort's pattern of life is when you're under state cover? What does a real State Department person look like when they are in that country? Where do they go? Where don't they go? How do we model ourselves after that to better operate below that radar?
The way we traditionally have taught case officers when they go abroad is obviously not to stand out, not to do anything that looks suspicious at all. You're trying to blend in with sort of the cultural baseline. Do we now have to do that electronically as well?
100%.
Yeah.
Yep. That is, and again, recognizing that a case officer or somebody who's in a denied hostile environment, they've only got so many things that they can be thinking about.
Yeah.
And so I don't want them worried about their digital signature. Operate, behave as you normally would, and that is part of your digital signature management, because there's not a tool that you can use. There's, everything must be original and defendable in terms of authenticity.
Yeah.
Because it's that the challenge in the digital signature management is it's a metadata field that you don't even know about. There are thousands of them that indicate that slight deviation from everybody else. Is that declaring you a spy? Not necessarily. It's just declaring that you're anomalous compared to everybody else. So, that involves, when you're doing your area familiarization, like, understand where Americans go for dinner, and then understand where, if you need to have a meeting with somebody, where does that intersect? Where can you be?
Right.
And that is digital casing that is very important to do, that all of this data helps us understand where where can we operate without it triggering the
So
Skynet?
it can be a help and a hindrance both at the same time.
We have to think about
Yeah.
it that way.
Yeah.
Until we start looking at it from the reclaiming initiative,
Right.
as opposed to being afraid of it being defensive. Like, you can't advance anything when you're constantly playing
Yeah.
defense.
I can't have my meetings because of this and that.
I'm going to just wait for walk-ins.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess so. I guess that'll work. But don't you want to be out? And how do we make it so that you can do that without you feeling like you have to invoke all sorts of new tradecraft?
I was thinking about this a little yesterday for something I was writing. I mean, do you think the 1990s and the early 2000s will kind of be looked back at as sort of like a golden era of intelligence gathering, that we had the technology, but no
Yeah.
one else did?
I think it's a good lesson because look at where we are now. We stopped modernizing because the Cold War dividend made it such that, we didn't have to be on the tip of the spear, and look what happened.
Right.
So this is one of those things at sort of the headquarters level, unless you are like, we should expect our intelligence agencies to be on the absolute cutting edge. And sometimes like some of the things that we do are amazing. Like, you can't make it up. It is so good. It just needs to be sort of culturally on the cutting edge. I shouldn't be explaining to a case officer of 10 years that the flashlight app made by a Chinese, university does not need to know your location. You should click that off.
And nowadays, you still do consulting with the U.S. government?
I do. Mostly on the training side. And the training curve, the programs of instruction have gone from sort of these exhaustive dumps on what is ad tech to how do we maneuver and manage it. Here are some solutions to minimizing the data that you are radiating individually. How do you think about that in terms of your career? And so there's starting to be some acceptance that it's not just awareness and admiring the problem and calling it progress. It's how do we move forward, because
Aggressively.
we're not going back to a pre-UTS environment.
Right,
Those
right.
days are gone. This is the operating environment. And like the people that were working in Moscow, they figured it out and they came up with a whole new Tradecraft program called Moscow Rules, and had dummies in the passenger seat of their car that they could pop up when they needed to, they had a little gap, put up the jack in the box. One guy dumps out, the surveillance team doesn't know the difference. We need to be thinking in terms like that, and we can do that. And I think that, there's all sorts of things that we can do that are on that bleeding edge that just give us that operational maneuverability, or that ability to reclaim some initiative and not stick out like a sore thumb, as someone who's carrying around some flip phone. And that's I think the curve, or that's where we're moving towards.
Like a normalization of this.
Yeah. But again, it's like trying to push a rock uphill, and there needs to be buy-in at the headquarters account.
Yeah.
All right, we're not calling it an existential threat anymore. We are moving forward, figure it out. What do you need? How do we deal with this? Because this isn't going away. And our business we are in the people business. So, but just, think about if you deconstruct that pipeline of intelligence work or operational work, figure out where these types of data sets enhance, de-risk take out some slack in the chain. Like, all right, we don't need to go and do this. We don't need to put somebody, set aside watching a play. We can watch it virtually and understand what's going on there. We need to be thinking in terms of how would an advertiser do this? And so that's sort of the meat of my instruction is here's what the advertising community is doing. If we look at this from here's where the future is for you, they're laying the map out for you as we speak. You need to be part of that, part of that conversation, part of that solution. And it is data, inference, probabilistic modeling, allocation of resources and attention. It's the analog to that is you're going through customs in a foreign country and there's something about you where you get pulled into secondary. What did you do to get pulled into secondary? From the data perspective, how are you getting pulled into an allocation of resource that is now going to look more deeply at you?
Right.
Whereas, the model was looking at 10 million people, nothing to see here until that one outlier. And that's where UTS becomes sort of an action platform, not so much a event reconstruction capability. And that's the future.
Yeah, the future's going to be wild.
But all these things are everything that I'm saying is I would give this advice to my next door neighbor.
Yeah.
This is not, think about privacy. The philosophy of privacy is a more dignified, way to live.
It's not something that's weird.
It's not something that's
yeah.
weird. It's not something that's limited to or specific to, the espionage business or the operational business. It is just a lifestyle choice.
Mm-hmm. So some of the other stuff you're working on, tell us about, you sit on the board of directors of Unplugged.
Unplugged.
Yeah.
Yep. So Unplugged is a privacy phone. It is a proprietary hardware operating system architecture. So there is a proprietary VPN that does everything that I've just been talking about in terms of mitigating the amount of data that's flowing off of your device. It is, and if we think about sort of the consumer bolt-on privacy tools, VPNs or the configuration toggles, that does not execute at the operating system level. So an app on your phone has wide latitude to go and collect. The Unplugged phone intervenes in that data collection and gives the user the capability of
like you were saying, Apple only has 2 toggles. This phone you
go.
can
If you carry around an iPhone, just go to privacy and security, and there's a bunch of security settings like access to your camera, microphone, things like that. But the privacy settings in Android is pretty much the same way. The privacy settings are your ad ID and location data. And the Unplugged phone is taking the entire surface of the device that an app can interrogate and collect, encrypt, transmit, is intervening in that process because it has system level authority and control. You don't have that with an iPhone. And
is this built off of an Android system?
so the hardware feels like an Android device, but the operating system is entirely proprietary.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Built hardware, software built for privacy, which again, the only way to mitigate or to intervene in the exfil of data requires that system level control, that system level authority. Because, when you install an app on your phone, the operating system, iOS or Android, does not have authority over what that app does. It is not overseeing whether that app is complying with policy. It is merely hosting that app, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
Apps collect far more than they need to for functionality.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a tremendous emerging market for a product like that. Now, last night I was reading a newsletter that's printed by what's called the Luddite Dispatch. Is the name of the newsletter, and I think it's a bunch of kids at like NYU and Columbia, but they're technology skeptical. They're not anti-technology necessarily, but they're like, the imposition of all these technologies into our lives is making our lives worse rather than better at this point. And so we need to like pull a little back. Like, we're not against like clean drinking water and things like that, but you know, we need to limit some of these things. And it sounds like that's exactly what this phone does.
It is. All of the apps that you would normally want to use still function. The intervention piece where the app is trying to send data, the app is still sending the essential data, but the data that it doesn't need is sort of zeroed out. So the app still is is functional.
It's just killing the
but
adware in the background.
Just mitigating that flow to the ad tech, to the monetization citadels that apps depend upon in order to be relevant. And so, you know, is it a maximalist solution? Am I sitting here saying this is going to 100% protect you from commercial? Anybody who says that is full of shit. But minimizing, intervening, having some control is the first step. And, you know, like if you listen to sort of the ad reads of VPNs, all a VPN is doing is changing the route of your traffic.
Right.
And the architecture of an app, you ever open up Uber while you're running a VPN and Uber knows exactly where you are? Because the VPNs are not operating at that app level. So
Not quite as protected as you think.
not quite as protected. So these bolt-on solutions, I think they're all great. You should definitely use them. But in the meantime, if you really are thinking about this, and I only arrived at because I was getting the question that I kept getting: how do I get off of commercial data? How do I do this? And sort of going to a first principles. Where does it all start? And it's these apps that you install it. That installation gives it permissions, and it's like pulling that surface. And the way in which this has become even more sort of acute when Apple released its privacy initiative. I think it was iOS 14 a couple years ago, where they gave the users the option to suppress the ad ID. It was a big deal. The monetization community, they said, okay, we don't get the ad ID, we don't get the stable identifier anymore. We'll go develop new ones. We don't get precise GPS anymore. We'll go infer location other ways. So they just sort of pivoted. Everybody's, thinking, oh, I'm private. I've selected these things. The apps haven't gone away.
Like you said, you're not going to defeat it.
You're not going to defeat it.
And you're working on a book too.
I am. It's called The Quantum Signature, and it is it's the intent behind it is to take all of the technology things that sort of are introduced in sort of fiction, but to apply what is really going on in a story that's readable and not just another book about surveillance capitalism.
So it's going to be like a novel about.
It's going to be real. Everything that's in it is a real thing, but the intent is that readers will be able to connect to it because it's things that are happening to them.
Right.
How I Spy on Terrorists, Traitors, and You is the subtitle. So that'll come out in June.
Oh, cool.
Of this year.
Awesome.
So you know how it goes.
Yeah. No, my book's coming out in June too.
Okay.
I'll give you a copy of
All
it
right.
if you want.
Cool. Absolutely.
Is there anything else we haven't talked about that you'd really like to touch upon?
Privacy is normal. Everybody should think privacy, not just operators. It's worth investing in.
For the like person out there that really is thinking like, I've got nothing to hide. I mean, what would you tell them, like, why your privacy is important? I mean, I guess this entire interview we've talked about this a bit.
I mean, so my first reply to them is you assume you know who's looking, and maybe you have nothing to hide today, but you don't know who's going to be looking in 10 years.
Right.
So, and what's in it for you to have?
Yeah.
What's the benefit?
Because there's criminals and stuff looking also.
You just don't know. It's like you have keys to your house, you lock your door. You live in a very safe neighborhood, but you still lock your door. That is about access. Privacy is about access. There are some things that you just should maintain as something that is not between you and companies you've never heard about.
Right.
And Phil, I mean, if you look at Judge Brandeis wrote The Right to Be Left Alone. It was an article that he wrote for the Harvard Law Review after his law partner, the paparazzi, invaded his law partner's daughter's wedding. And this became landmark. It's basically the basis for a lot of our privacy laws written in 50s, 40s. You go back and it could have been written today, just in terms of the risks that he was seeing. And that, I think, is, the more things we think we're experiencing everything for the first time.
Yeah.
It's all, we've all seen it before. I had a reason to rewatch The Matrix the other day, and Lawrence Fishburne he should be like the spokesperson for privacy, because both in The Matrix and in John Wick, where he's, using pigeons to communicate because he doesn't trust the internet. If you think about just the sort of the prescience of that movie in 1999 in terms of data, privacy, the big machine in the sky, like, okay, I don't know that they may be doing all sorts of acrobatic moves, but the rest of everything that they've described is pretty spot on.
Yeah. The movie works, I think, real well as like a metaphor. Not that we're living in a virtual world, but rather that like our reality is crafted by these massive institutions all around us all the time.
Absolutely. And I think do I gain anything by saying no to that?
Right.
I don't know, but I certainly don't need to just be a sheep to the eye of Tim Cook and Sergey Brin. Like, I don't need to be their ones and zero. Their 1 and 0. I won't do that.
Yeah.
And that's the path to operational initiative. Like, privacy is now sort of like the first pillar of Tradecraft. You come in, you start out. Do you want to broadcast to everybody that you've just joined the CIA?
Right.
Probably want to, think about that, because in 10 years it'll matter that you posted something, a picture of you and the recruiter at the recruiting fair with the CIA logo in the background with your thumb up. Like, probably, that's going to come back and get you. So anyway, but no, I appreciate you having me on. This is great.
Yeah. Thanks for doing it. I think this is like a very unique perspective and get people thinking a little bit outside the box.
Hope so.
Yeah.
Hope so.
You have any websites or anything you want to direct people to, places where they can find you on LinkedIn?
I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay. Find you on TikTok? You have a TikTok?
Yeah, you find me on TikTok, exactly. Other than that, I am, other than, just Googling my name, but you can get to me on LinkedIn. And that's where I spend most of my social media investment.
Cool.
So.
Well, yeah, thank you. Thanks again, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And everyone out there, we will see you next time. Thanks for joining us.
Guys, I want to tell all of you today about a new newsletter that we're launching that encompasses both the Team House podcast, the Eyes On podcast, and the High Side news outlet, which I run with Sean Naylor. The newsletter is going to be once a week. It's going to come into your inbox, and you're going to get the most current podcasts on Eyes On and the Team House and whatever's topical or current on the high side. So it's another way for us to get the information out to you, as social media algorithms are pretty iffy and you never really know what you're going to get. So this is a once a week email. It'll slide into your inbox and it will have, the greatest hits of that week.
It's really good, man. I'm checking it out.
The website for it is teamhousepodcast.kit.com/join. teamhousepodcast.kit.com/join. You go there and you enter into your email list, or you enter your email into the little thing on the website, and you're good to go. And that'll be it. So we really appreciate your support and hope you'll consider signing up.
Where's the link?
The link will also be down in the description if you're looking for it there.
And that's teamhousepodcast.kit, KIT, Kilo India Tango.com /join.